I sold my startup to save his company. He gave the CEO title to his mistress. But when the boardroom lights came on, the truth shattered everything. The patent was always mine. And so was the empire he thought he owned. They thought they could erase me from the picture with one cruel stroke of a pen. But the truth? The estate they tried to steal was standing on land that belonged to me, and only me. And I remember every detail of how it began. My name is Clara. I'm 34 years old, and if you had asked me 5 years ago where I saw myself today, I would have answered without hesitation, happy, married, and finally at peace. Back then, life still seemed kind, or at least kinder than what it would soon reveal. I had just lost my father, a man who had worked tirelessly his whole life to leave me something small, modest, but deeply meaningful, his inheritance. It wasn't a fortune, not compared to the grand estates of old families, but it was enough to build a life. Enough to make me feel safe. I thought it would also be enough to earn the respect of the man I loved, Daniel. He wasn't just anyone. He was the heir to an old, powerful family whose name carried weight in every corner of our town. The Fairchilds. They had wealth, history, and arrogance that bled into every word they spoke. And I was the outsider who dared to love their golden boy. When Daniel asked me to marry him, I thought I had won the universe. His family estate was breathtaking, miles of rolling gardens, fountains that whispered under moonlight, a mansion so vast it echoed with your every step. But behind the beauty, there was rot. His parents, William and Margaret, were cold, calculating people who looked at me with the kind of polite smile you give a servant. They never said it outright, but I knew what they thought. I was beneath them. My inheritance might as well have been pocket change in their eyes. Still, I wanted to prove myself. I wanted them to see that I wasn't just some ordinary girl who'd stumbled into their world. So when the estate began to crumble, walls cracking, roofs leaking, gardens turning wild, I saw my chance. Daniel mentioned, almost in passing, that his family was struggling with maintenance costs. The estate was old, expensive to keep, and no one wanted to admit the truth. Their pride was falling apart. That's when I did something most people would call insane. I offered to use my inheritance, every cent of what my father had left me, to restore it. For us, I told Daniel. For our future. For the family we would build inside those walls. His eyes lit up that night. For the first time, I felt like I truly belonged in his world. Clara, he whispered, holding my hands as though I was his savior, you have no idea what this means. You're saving us. But not everyone was grateful. Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line when Daniel told her my plan. William gave a curt nod, as if agreeing to tolerate me, but not for long. They didn't argue, not openly. But I could see it, simmering beneath their polite words, resentment. Because I was giving what they no longer could. Because I was about to pour my blood and soul into their estate, and they couldn't stop me. Renovation began soon after. I hired the best architects, the most skilled workers, and for months I was everywhere, overseeing designs, choosing colors, walking the dust-filled halls with my hard hat on while Daniel's parents watched from their polished windows. I told myself it was worth it. That when the work was done, they would finally accept me. That the estate, reborn from ruin, would become our home. But there was one moment I can't forget. One evening, while checking the progress in the West Wing, I overheard Margaret speaking to her husband. She didn't know I was nearby. Her voice, sharp and dripping with disdain, carried through the cracked doorway. She thinks this will make her one of us, she sneered. Let her spend her little inheritance. When the house is finished, she'll learn her place. My chest tightened. I froze, unable to move, my heart hammering as William chuckled in response. Exactly. Let her build our palace. When it's done, she'll be nothing more than a guest in it. Those words carved into me like knives. I stumbled back quietly, hiding my tears, telling myself I must have misunderstood. That maybe they didn't mean it the way it sounded. I wanted so desperately to believe Daniel's love was enough to protect me. So I stayed silent. I worked harder. I buried my fears under blueprints and paint samples. And when the first wing was restored, gleaming, alive again, I allowed myself to dream. Dream that perhaps, despite their cruelty, I was building something lasting. What I didn't know was that every brick I laid, every wall I restored, was carrying me closer to the moment they would shatter everything. And when that day came, I would laugh, not with joy, but with the kind of cold laughter that comes from surviving betrayal. Because the land beneath their beloved mansion? It wasn't theirs to begin with. It was mine. Renovation was supposed to bring us closer. Instead, it became the silent battlefield where loyalty, pride, and betrayal played out in whispers behind closed doors. For the first few weeks, I lived in a strange rhythm. By day, I was on site with workers, reviewing designs, sketching plans, walking through dust and debris in my boots while my hair clung with plaster. By night, I tried to slip back into the role of Daniel's perfect wife, seated beside him at long mahogany dinners where his parents picked at their meals and, more often than not, at me. At first, Daniel defended me. When Margaret complained that I was turning their heritage into some modern hotel, he would reach for my hand under the table and squeeze. "Mother, Clara is saving this place. Do you even realize what it would cost if she weren't doing this for us?" Margaret's fork clinked against her plate as she glared at me. For us, Daniel? Or for herself? People don't spend that kind of money without expecting something in return. Her words stung, but I bit my tongue. I wanted to scream that the only thing I wanted was to belong. To feel like I wasn't some stranger trespassing on their legacy. But Daniel squeezed my hand again, and I stayed quiet. As weeks stretched into months, the estate transformed before my eyes. What had once been decaying halls and leaking roofs now glistened with fresh paint and sturdy stone. The gardens bloomed again, fountains trickled with crystal clarity, and the ballroom, oh, the ballroom, came alive with light streaming through restored stained glass. Workers said it looked like something out of a fairy tale. And for a moment, I let myself believe it could be the stage for my happily ever after. But happiness was fragile in that house. One evening, after a long day of choosing marble tiles, I found Daniel in his study with William. Their voices were hushed, but I caught enough as I lingered outside the door. "Don't you think she's overstepping?" William said. "The estate has been in our family for generations. Yet it feels like she's claiming it with every decision." Daniel sighed. "Father, she's doing this for us. Without Clara, the estate would collapse." "For us?" William scoffed. "No. She's building her mark on our name. Don't be blind. Once the money's gone, what will she have left but resentment that she gave it all to us?" I pressed a hand against the cold wall, swallowing the knot rising in my throat. Was that how they all saw me? A woman desperate to carve herself into their history, unworthy of the legacy she was trying to save? Later that night, when I confronted Daniel, he brushed it off. "You know how my father is. He doesn't mean half of what he says." He pulled me into his arms, kissing my forehead like a child in need of reassurance. "Trust me, Clara. When this is done, everything will change. They'll see you the way I do." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The turning point came during the grand reveal of the East Wing. Months of work had led to this moment. We invited family friends, neighbors, and business associates. I wore a simple dress, not wanting to outshine the estate itself, yet Daniel insisted I stood beside him as the curtains dropped, unveiling the restored wing in all its glory. The applause was overwhelming. Compliments poured in, praising the craftsmanship, the elegance, the revival of history. "Magnificent," one guest whispered. "It's as if the house has breathed again." For one fleeting second, I felt seen. Not just tolerated, but respected. And then Margaret's voice cut through the crowd like a blade. Yes, magnificent indeed. All thanks to the Fairchilds for preserving what was rightfully ours. Ours. Not a word about me. Not a mention that I had drained my father's inheritance into their crumbling empire. Guests clapped politely, oblivious to the sting in her omission, but my chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. Daniel said nothing. His silence was louder than any betrayal. That night, I lay awake staring at the ornate ceiling I had paid to restore, wondering if I had just bought myself a gilded prison. As the renovations neared completion, tension in the house thickened. Workers whispered that they felt watched, as if the walls themselves held secrets. And maybe they were right. Because every time I passed Margaret in the halls, her eyes trailed me with a quiet warning, "This is not yours. It never will be." Still, I pressed on. Because despite everything, I believed love would shield me. I believed Daniel would stand beside me, proud, when the final brick was laid. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that the very day the estate gleamed in its full restored glory would also be the day they turned on me. The day I would discover their plan. The day I would stop being the outsider desperate for a place at their table. And become the woman who held the one card they never saw coming. The estate had never looked more alive. Crystal chandeliers glittered, violins sang in the air, and the once crumbling walls now radiated a warmth that drew gasps from every guest who walked through the grand doors. Tonight was supposed to be my night, our night. The night the world finally saw that my love, my money, and my vision had saved a dying legacy. I had spent weeks preparing the final unveiling, the West Garden, fully restored with marble statues, flowing fountains, and roses so red they looked almost unreal under the soft glow of lanterns. Every detail was mine. Every decision, every sacrifice. My father's inheritance wasn't just in the soil, it was in the bricks, in the chandeliers, in the life now pulsing through this mansion. Daniel squeezed my hand as we stood by the terrace, guests clapping, cameras flashing. "You did it," he whispered, his smile radiant. "You did it." For a heartbeat, I let myself believe it was true. Then William tapped his glass with a spoon, and the room fell silent. "Ladies and gentlemen," his deep voice boomed, "tonight is a celebration, not of change, but of preservation. Thanks to the Fairchild family's commitment, our ancestral home lives again." Applause rippled. My smile faltered. Commitment? Fairchild family. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to correct his father, to acknowledge my role. He only raised his glass. William continued, "And as tradition dictates, with this renewal comes a renewal of our legacy. Daniel will continue to uphold the family's honor, while Margaret and I ensure that the estate remains under rightful Fairchild stewardship. It is only fitting that we formally reaffirm our lineage." My stomach turned cold. What did he mean? Then Margaret stepped forward, her voice sweet but sharp as a blade. "Which is why we've decided to update the will. The estate, the lands, and all assets tied to the Fairchild name will remain solely within Fairchild blood. Tonight marks a new chapter, one where we ensure no outsider can claim what was never theirs." The words struck like thunder. The room erupted in polite claps, but all I heard was the roar in my ears. Outsider. That was me. The woman who had poured millions into their crumbling dynasty. The woman who believed love could earn her a place in their story. I turned to Daniel. "Did you know about this?" My voice trembled, barely audible over the crowd. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Clara. It's complicated. This is family business." Family business. I pulled my hand away as if his touch burned me. My chest tightened, fury and heartbreak twisting together until I could barely breathe. Margaret's eyes locked on mine from across the room. Cold. Triumphant. She knew exactly what she'd done. That night, after the last guest left, I confronted Daniel in the study. You let them humiliate me, I said, my voice raw. Everything in this house exists because of me. My money. My sacrifice. And you stood there while they erased me from your history. He rubbed his temples. Clara, please. You don't understand. My parents. Your parents. I cut him off. What about your wife? What about the woman who sold her inheritance to save you from ruin? He finally snapped, slamming his hand on the desk. Enough. You think this was all about you? This estate has been in my family for centuries. You were naive to believe money could buy you a place in it. You should have known your role. Silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. My role. That was when it hit me. They had never seen me as family. Not Margaret. Not William. Not even Daniel. To them, I was a temporary benefactor, a bank account with a wedding ring attached. Nothing more. I walked out of that study with my head high, even as tears blurred my vision. Because though they thought they had won, they had overlooked one crucial truth. The estate may have been their legacy. But the land it stood on, the deed, the very ground beneath their ancestral pride, was in my name. They had disinherited me from their world. But they had built their world on my foundation. And soon, they would learn what it meant to betray a woman who held the earth beneath their feet. The silence after betrayal is the loudest sound in the world. For 3 nights I didn't sleep. I wandered the restored halls like a ghost, my footsteps echoing against marble floors I had paid for. Every chandelier, every tapestry, every flower in the garden, it all mocked me. Not because it was theirs, but because they had the audacity to pretend I'd never existed. On the 4th morning, I stopped crying. I poured myself a glass of coffee, spread the documents across my desk, and forced my mind to focus. If they thought they could erase me, they had underestimated the wrong woman. At the very bottom of the pile was a thin folder labeled in my handwriting, Patent Filing, Biomass Energy Conversion Process. The very patent my startup had been built on. The innovation that made Daniel's failing company attractive to investors again. The process that was now fueling the estate's transformation and future revenue streams. And the name on that patent wasn't Fairchild. It was Clara Whitmore. Mine. Always mine. I traced my fingers over the embossed seal and felt something shift inside me. They thought I was powerless. They thought money had been my only contribution. But this patent, this proof of my intellect, my vision, was my sword. That evening, I walked into the library where Margaret sat sipping sherry, her pearls glistening against her neck like trophies. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Clara, she drawled. Shouldn't you be packing? It's only a matter of time before Daniel files for annulment. Her smirk made my blood boil, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I sat across from her, calm, deliberate. Tell me something, Margaret, I said softly. How does it feel to live in a house standing on land that isn't yours? Her glass froze midair. I smiled. Oh, you didn't know? I suppose Daniel never told you. When I sold my startup, I purchased the deed outright. This estate doesn't belong to your family anymore. It belongs to me. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For once, Margaret looked rattled. I stood, smoothing my dress. So enjoy your sherry. Enjoy your illusions. But remember this, every breath you take under this roof is borrowed from me. Then I left her sitting in stunned silence. The next days became my quiet war. I contacted lawyers in secret, ensuring that every clause tied to the land deed was airtight. I reviewed the patent filings, updated protections, and strengthened licensing agreements that tied the Fairchild Company to my intellectual property. If they wanted to use my innovations, they would pay for them, through me. Daniel knocked on my door one night, his face weary. Clara, please. Don't make this harder. You've embarrassed yourself enough. Let's resolve this privately before it gets ugly. I stared at him, my husband, the man I had once believed in. Ugly. I whispered. Daniel, we passed ugly the moment you let your parents spit on me in front of the world. The moment you gave my sacrifices to your mistress. His jaw clenched. Margaret deserves recognition. She. Recognition? I cut him off, my voice rising for the first time. She bled nothing for you. She risked nothing. And you dare hand her what I built? No, Daniel. If she wants to play CEO, let her. But she'll soon learn the crown she wears is made of glass. I slammed the patent folder onto the desk in front of him. His face paled as he read my name across the title page. You see, Daniel, I continued coldly, I don't need your family's name. I don't need your approval. The very foundation of your reborn empire rests on my work. Without me, you have nothing but crumbling bricks and empty pride. For the first time, he looked small. Truly small. By the end of the week, whispers began to circulate in the business world. Investors were uneasy. Contracts once secured under Daniel's leadership were now under review, because all of them relied on my patent. I stayed quiet. I didn't storm into meetings or demand attention. I let the silence work for me, just as it had once suffocated me. Only this time, it was their turn to drown in it. Because I knew the storm was coming. And I would be the one holding the lightning. The Fairchild boardroom had always smelled of arrogance, polished oak, cigars, and the stale perfume of old money. That morning, the air was thicker than ever. I walked in dressed in navy silk, not as a wife or a guest, but as an equal. My heels clicked against the marble, each step deliberate. Around the long table, board members shifted uneasily. At the head, Daniel sat beside Margaret, who wore a smug smile as if she had already claimed her throne. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel began, clearing his throat. Today we appoint our new CEO. A visionary who represents the future of Fairchild Enterprises, Margaret Sterling. Applause scattered across the room, weak but present. Margaret rose, smoothing her tailored suit. Thank you. I promise to honor the Fairchild legacy and... Sit down. The words came from me. Calm. Clear. But sharp enough to slice the room into silence. Margaret blinked, stunned. Excuse me. I placed a leather folder onto the table and slid it forward. Before you crown anyone, the board should know the truth. Every current Fairchild contract, every energy project you boast about, rests on this patent. The chairman picked it up, adjusting his glasses. His eyes widened as he read aloud, Biomass Energy Conversion Process. Filed by Clara Whitmore. Whispers erupted. Margaret's smile faltered. I stepped closer, my voice steady. The technology you parade as Fairchild's salvation was never yours. It was mine. Licensed under my terms. Which means any use of it without my approval is theft. Daniel shot up from his chair, face red. Clara, don't do this. We're family. I laughed bitterly. Family. Did family throw me aside? Did family hand my life's work to a mistress while telling me I was unworthy? No, Daniel. You chose her. Now you live with the consequences. Margaret tried to interject, her voice shrill. She's bluffing. Daniel, tell them? But the chairman slammed his hand on the table. This isn't a bluff. If the patent is in her name, every deal we've signed is void without her consent. Gasps filled the room. Investors shifted, some already reaching for their phones. Stocks, contracts, reputations, all trembling on the edge. I leaned forward. But that's not all. The estate you flaunt as the company's rebirth? The land beneath it, the deed, it's mine too. Bought in full, with the money I earned selling my startup. You've been playing king and queen in my house. Margaret's face drained of color. Daniel's hands shook at his sides. Which brings us to a choice, I continued, my voice ringing through the chamber. Either you renegotiate every contract with me as the rightful patent holder, or you watch the company collapse under lawsuits, bankrupt within months. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. The board turned, not to Daniel, not to Margaret, but to me. Hours later, when the meeting ended, Daniel approached me in the corridor, his voice breaking. Clara. We can fix this. I made mistakes, but we can rebuild together. Just, don't destroy everything my family built. I looked at him, the man I had once loved enough to burn my own future for. And for a brief moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. You destroyed it yourself, Daniel, I whispered. When you gave my crown to your mistress. Then I walked away, heels echoing like victory drums. That night, as I stood on the balcony of my estate, I finally breathed. The stars above seemed brighter, the air sharper, as though the universe itself had been waiting for me to claim what was mine. Margaret's smugness had shattered, Daniel's empire lay trembling, and the board now knew the truth. I was not the discarded wife, not the silent victim. I was Clara Whitmore. The woman who sold her startup, only to watch her husband hand the crown to another. But in the end, the crown was never theirs to give. The patent. The land. The future. All of it had always been mine. And now the world knew it too.